have a confession to make. But first, before I do, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my reading habits so that we can set the context a little bit. It is my favorite hobby, has been for my whole life. Reading is how I fall asleep, how I relax, and what I do when my whole house is clean and it smells good and it's 6 a.m. and everything is quiet and the souls are asleep. Now, I am not a casual, like if I see an interesting book in the airport type reader. No. I am borderline obsessed with the written word, to the point that my whole life really does revolve around stories. Now, my confession, I have a nasty Kindle Unlimited habit, and I hate it. The first Kindle came out in 2007. I think that's what this is. It might be a second generation Paperwhite, but it even still has 3G connection. Now, I replaced it a couple of years ago with a book, so it isn't from Kindle, but I still use the Kindle app on it because after almost 20 years, literally my Kindle algorithm is like dialed in. I can just open it and look at my recommendations. Perfect. But I am so sick of giving Amazon my money, okay? I don't want to give Amazon money anymore. I want to divest. Divest, get away. You should too. Can you relate to this? It's actually really hard to find a replacement that doesn't break the bank. So I found Libby, where I can just use my library card from my US-based library, and it connects me with a ton, like millions of digital books and audiobooks from my library and associated libraries. I promise you, this is a non-spawn. Like, this is not an advertisement. I'm just really excited to have a potential alternative that feeds my book habit without breaking the bank. And what, dear listener, finally drove me to make the switch after almost 20 years of patronage at Amazon? A book! Of course, this book, The Day After: How to Wield Power in a Post-Trump World by Brian Tyler Cohen. And that's what I'm talking about today on EnvironMental with Dandelion. If this is your first time tuning in, hi, hello, I'm Ob, your host and the founder of Dandelion, where my team and I help get the stories that matter into the hands that make a difference. And on this channel, I'm narrating the biggest scandal on the planet, the climate crisis. And you're here because you're an eco-curious baddie who's been called an alarmist hippie, even though the world is burning. And you're just looking for a little critical thinking around it in your daily scroll. Welcome. Welcome. I'm happy to have you here. Sorry. I have a little bit of a cold today. But if you could take a moment and tap the subscribe button, you know, like it's the lifeboat that Jack definitely could have fit on, we'll all make our way to safety together. Today's episode is different than your typical environmental podcast because I'm not going to talk about sustainability directly. I am doing an unsolicited book review of The Day After: How to Wield Power in a Post-Trump World by Brian Tyler Cohen. That's this book. Have you seen it? If you haven't, I'm showing it to you right now. Now, I don't think it comes as any level of surprise to you that I think understanding our political landscape is an important part of understanding sustainability, because I believe that politics and policy are a major factor in the transition to a more sustainable future. There is only so much we can do as individuals. And a lot of people have this very valid feeling that they can't make a huge difference because cleaning up downstream issues doesn't help when the tap is wide open on pollution and the unsustainable capitalist world that we live in. I do not think that policy is the end-all be-all of sustainability, but I do think that it can be the force behind turning that unsustainable tap off. And that is where this book comes in. I wanted to do this book review because I think that Brian Tyler Cohen, who I'm also going to refer to as BTC, is an important voice in the independent media world today. I watch a lot of his content on YouTube, and although he is a staunch Democrat, I do not think that he is unfair in how he communicates. I also don't think that he's a Democrat for the sake of staying blue. He's critical of policies, and I would say especially bipartisan policies that aren't good for people or the planet. And he is not afraid to take shots at either side of the political playing field. For me, it's really clear that he values the idea that the only job of a working government, working being the operative word there, is to protect and serve the people of its nation. Like he says on page 56 of his book, it's worth remembering that our elected officials are in office to serve the people, not the institutions and processes of government. In the US, we are forced to choose sides because there are only two real options right now. And those options are increasingly antagonistic. I think this quote really says a lot about that. The very notion of bipartisan politics is based on a political culture that died out in the 1990s. Today, bipartisanship means finding a tiny number of votes from the other side so you can pretend there's a broad base of support for your policies. Additionally, I resonate with his reasons for being political. In an interview with Gavin Newsom, BTC was open that he got into politics because of climate change. And like I said before, I think a lot of people in the environmental space get political because it's so clear how important policy and regulations are to creating a future that's safe for everyone. Plus, it doesn't hurt that Brian Tyler Cohen is currently one of two influencers on Trump's media offenders list, which, by the way, I think is reprehensible. I think it's an abuse of power of the office of the President of the United States. And I think that it is just shy of unconstitutional because he can't actually shut down the media based on word alone. It's the First Amendment of the Constitution. And I covered that in the Supreme Court extractive tapestry episode, which I'll put on the screen here for you to go watch. So instead of shutting it down, the US administration shuts down people using intimidation and surveillance and bullshit lawsuits. The Day After covers that so well. If you want to know more about how they're doing that, it's chapter 9 in the book. Now it's time to start the review. Before I started reading it, I had the foresight to write down what I thought it would be, what I was worried it would be, and also what I hoped to get from it. So what did I think this book would be like? Well, like I said, I watch a lot of Brian Tyler Cohen's content already. So I really expected this to be more of his sort of intelligent political pundit work. Because I already watched so much, I didn't expect to learn a lot from it. I expected to wade through a lot of opinions around how this administration is literally the worst ever. But here's the thing. I wanted to support independent media, and I knew I wanted to do this book review, so I bought it. What I was worried about reading was a book that was alienating to people who consider themselves Republican. I don't think political discourse is helpful when it's just shouting inside of an echo chamber. And I don't think us versus them thinking is good for governments. It's not. It's like, work together, but they don't work together. It's a problem. In my heart of hearts, I do consider myself a patriot. And I find the discourse on both sides of the aisle to be reprehensible and totally embarrassing. Like, as an American that lives in Europe, I'm embarrassed by what I see in the political discourse right now. So I didn't want to read a book of more of the slander and hyperbole that exists in most political commentary today. And while I don't think that BTC does this in his content, I'm gonna put the book like this. I was genuinely concerned that in book form, it would come off as dramatic and hateful. My hope and almost my expectation for the day after is that I would learn about the real problems the US government is facing today. Past the fact that a lying con man felon is in charge and completely off the rails with no consequences. That statement is not slander or hyperbole. Don't come for me, because the issues go a lot deeper than that. And I honestly think that the Trump administration is a symptom of the issues that opportunists with power have seized. I do not think it is the original problem. And I've talked about this a lot in past episodes. Like, I don't think this just happened overnight. It didn't happen overnight. There are clear through lines in the history of power in the United States. And what we're seeing right now is the end game of multiple generations of planning. I hoped that it would be clear in this book because Brian Tyler Cohen has 5 million plus followers on YouTube alone. And I had hoped for deep and meaningful substance using his voice. I was also hopeful for clear, obtainable solutions that set down Republican and Democrat fighting and infighting, and for a look at what's the best for people and the future of the United States. I wanted to walk away from this book feeling hopeful and like there's some semblance of a plan of action in the world that could unfuck the mess that we're in right now. Okay. It's finally time for the review. I know. Listen, I've taken up a lot of your time already. It took us a while to get here. I'm a chatty bitch and I will not apologize for it. Okay? Thanks for sticking with me. Let me preface this by saying that it is impossible to love this book just because it's so dark. It is the truth laid bare, and let me tell you, that truth is uglier than you can imagine. Like, there are moments where it feels dystopian because it is so damn intense. Like, I'd be reading it and I'd be so totally caught up in the story that I forgot it was real. I'd have to come up for air, put my nonfiction hat on, and start sections over again because there are parts where it feels impossible that basically a handful of people have completely derailed the country and endangered the lives of millions for profit. There's simply no other way to put that at all. That said, the day after is expertly written. I think this book is excellent, and I definitely recommend reading it if you've been on the fence, or if you're a Brian Tyler Cohen fan like myself. It definitely holds that classic BTC voice. Because look, I didn't listen to it on audiobook, and I don't know if I would recommend listening to it on audiobook because it's just so dense and I would really struggle to get it in my brain. But it's okay. You don't need to listen on audiobook. I could hear the BTC of it all the way through, which does mean, yes, there were some serious digs and there were moments of frustration baked in. There were also questions like this one on page 75. Can a country still call itself a democracy if its leader is ready to sacrifice democratic elections to protect himself? I know, it's a lot. And I do think that there's a lot of space in this book for readers' own critical thoughts and questions. And I wrote a lot of them in the margins, like, like a lot. And I really appreciated that. I appreciated that there was space for me to think about it as I was reading it. And when I tell you that this man brought the receipts, you better believe it, because this is not just a bitch fest about the current administration. Not by a long shot. The day after is a serious look at how we got here that goes through the generations of policy and politics in the United States, which is exactly what I hoped for. It intertwines administrations and policy through lines that I've never seen pieced together before, calling out important players that made behind the scenes decisions that you've never heard of, that made massive differences in the way the US policy is run right now. Like the research that went into this is above and beyond. Flowers to you, Brian. Great job and thank you. It also covers something I've talked about a lot throughout the Extractive Tapestry series and sort of environmental podcast at large, which is power, influence, and the people who want to be close to it. Because the reality is that this isn't just Trump and Pam Bondi and JD Vance and Todd Blanche and the Fox News. It's all the middlemen. All right. It's the pencil pushers that live in the details, that know the rules and know the loopholes. It's the people you don't see. It's the people who want to be close to power, but not on screen. Those are the folks that are so dangerous. Now, he wrote about it several times, but there's one quote that I really appreciate here. It's on page 140. Fear is spread, not just by the autocrat or his armed guards, but by small-time middle managers who take it upon themselves to act like mob-style militia. Nailed it. I'm looking at you, Lee Zeldin. He's the head of the EPA, and he's EnvironMental my ass. I have a contractual obligation with myself to shit talk Lee Zeldin in every one of these episodes. All of that said, I didn't feel like I had to wade through a swamp of like insults and spiteful rhetoric from BTC. The information was hard to read. Yes, that's true. But that's not on Mr. Cohen. No, it's not on you, sir. Because this is legitimately heavy. Things are objectively bad for US citizens and the relationships with the rest of the world right now. There is just genuinely like no levity to be had here. So it was bad news and it was offensive, but it wasn't hyperbolic slander. Also, I was so wrong in the expectation that I wouldn't learn a lot because, honey, I learned a lot. I learned so much that I made you a glossary in my resources document, which is linked in the show notes. Like, I sort of can't believe that all that information fit in 185 pages, legitimately. I don't know. I had also hoped for solutions. And there were solutions. There were a lot of solutions, but I feel like they were buried in the text. Like, there was no list anywhere of them. And there's no real like blueprint. And maybe that was intentional. But I did sort of expect like some level of a list from someone who's media savvy enough to build a 5 million person following who like understands how people operate. So I made the list. So don't worry. I made the list of solutions he proposed while I was writing and researching for this episode. That's also in the resources document because I personally cannot function without a to-do list. Partially, I think I also made it because I thought I would feel hopeful if I could just look at those 16 things and see a future in them. But unfortunately, I didn't walk away from the day after feeling hopeful, informed, aghast, overwhelmed, rededicated, and excited. Yes. But hopeful is a bit too strong of a word for the pile pile of things we legitimately need to do to turn the USA around. And while I do hope that these things will get done by the administration, I don't feel hopeful that they will based on the same history that was written in the book. Like, I wish that was different. I wish I had the faith that Brian Tyler Cohen has in the potential of people in the government. But I just don't. Unfortunately, I just don't. I have faith in people like you and me. And on that note, I didn't feel like I walked away with a personal solution, like something that I could do with a to-do list for me. That's not to say I don't love these solutions and the ideas behind them. I do. And I legitimately think that if the government can do even like a quarter of them, things would be better for the American public. But there's just nothing I can do myself. Like, what I can do and you can do is vote with our ballots, with our actions, with our dollars. And these are all things I'm doing already, right? Now, I can't expect BTC to be a guru for the people. I know that. He is a brilliant, independent media agent informing us about the government. Of course, he's got great advice for how the government can be better for you and me, okay? His role is to understand those solutions. I just also wish there was something more that I could do than stay informed, support independent media, not use generative AI, not support Amazon, and vote. And I don't really think that's on Cohen. I really think that's where I'm at, because I feel like we're in the climax of a dystopian fantasy novel where everything seems bleak and so sad. And I'm just trying to hold on to the story arc that if the unlikely hero can come back from the brink of death and defeat the evildoers in an impossible turn of events, we can too. That's where I'm at. I'll leave the substantive part of this review with one of my favorite quotes from the book. Democracies don't just fall off a cliff. They get pushed. First, an autocrat wins an election and seizes full power. The legislature becomes a puppet. The courts lose their independence. Businesses prostrate themselves to make money. The only surviving check and balance is the media. So the media's independence is hacked back through extorting its corporate owners with threats, nuisance lawsuits, and government oversight. The free press dies not with a bang, but with a bunch of wimps. Woof. BTC, I gotta tell ya that if you ever want to retire and live a quiet life full of writing novels of high fantasy, I am officially the first person on your waiting list. Sign me up. So who should read this book? Now, I am not going to tell you everyone should read The Day After by Brian Tyler Cohen. You're shocked by that, right? I don't know. If you are following me and you're watching this right now, you're used to sort of intertwining tapestries of complicated nuance, this would be a great book for you. For the sustainability advocate, the politically active, the naturally curious, you're going to love this book. It is going to leave you pondering for days. It's going to grip you and you're not going to be able to put it down. True. Do I think you should give it to your dad? Maybe not, although I am going to give it to mine. So there's that. The Day After is written for people that make room for critical thinking and who would be okay with admitting when they're wrong. Obviously, there's a whole subsection of people that's not for. This is not a great book for changing someone's mind. It's way too complex, and it's not going to end the fighting over the dinner table. Like, if you're like, I'm going to buy this book, I am going to give it to my Aunt Kathy, and she's going to read it, and she's going to become a change person in the world. probably won't happen. Yeah, there is a ton of indisputable facts in here. But there's like so much that people who are stuck in their beliefs are going to gloss right through it, and they're only going to see the frustration in these pages. I think partially because there's no idolizing here. Like, I think this Trump guy, or maybe a sign over here, should be having a sign that says, "Miss me with the sycophants." All right. And that goes for people on both sides of the aisle. There's no like pandering in this book. So take that with a grain of salt. The last point I really want to make here is that I don't think The Day After is accessible to everyone, unfortunately. The National Literacy Institute says that more than half of adults in the United States read below a 6th grade reading level, and that the US ranks 36th on the literacy scale, like in the world. I wanted to go off on a rant about education here. It's been a problem in the US for a long time. That's a different story, so I'm going to park that rant for another day. Just like pretend it's inserted here. But if that's true, which I think it is, I do think that this book would be challenging to comprehend for most people. And I wouldn't typically call this out, but it's so dense that I think that it's worth mentioning that this does require a higher than average reading level, because it is so dense and it just moves and moves and moves. Like if you watch Brian Tyler Cohen, you know what I mean. He's like on it and intelligent, and he speaks. Yeah, he uses big words. Okay. If you're looking for something accessible, move along. This might not be the book for you, but if you are in college, if you are on a debate team, if you are interested in or thinking about getting into politics, The Day After, How to Wield Power in a Post-Trump World should be the next book on your reading list. Because, like Mr. Cohen says, our last chance to save democracy is upon us. It's not someone else's job. That's on the last page of the book. And I'm going to leave you with that as the final thought here, because anyone who can make a difference in climate change, politics, the transition to a sustainable future, or even just a livable world is alive and able to vote right now. That's you. That's me. That's our friends and our families and all the strangers we see on the street and in the flame wars in the comment section. We're a closed circuit, y'all, and we're shouldering a combination of crises that were foreseen and preventable. These are problems that most of us did not create or ask for, but we are in charge of right now. And we need to work on forcing the solutions, because the consequences only get worse from here. And like I said before, I believe in you and me. I believe in the power of us. So if there's one takeaway from this that you can do, stay informed, stay vocal, man, and vote. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do more book reviews. Bonus points if you drop a book for me to review. I love them. You might just see more. I might just feel like doing them more. In any case, I'm going to put another episode for you to watch on the screen here next to a photo of my face, so that it's easier for you to click on and subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you for the work you're doing, especially if that work is on yourself. Bye.